Feel like the spell is finally broken. Feel like the shadows lifted from my eyes. For all the times these blues are taken, my freedom's come as such a sweet surprise. From the darkness of my window, I wondered if I'd ever see the light. Like a blackbird from the ruins, I can feel my spirit taking flight, and I can't hold back the sun. I can't hold back the sun. It's been too cold, it's been too long. I can't hold back the sun. I was shattered, I was beaten. I was sure that I would fade away. Then the angel of the morning found a way to bring a brand new day. And I can't hold back the sun. I can't hold back the sun. It's been too cold, it's been too long. I can't hold back the sun. Gonna shake that devil off my shoulders. Gonna put my faith in what's to come. Feel like the spell is finally broken. Feel like the shadows lifted from my eyes. For all the times these blues are taken, my freedom's come as such a sweet surprise. From the darkness of my window, I wondered if I'd ever see the light. Like a blackbird from the ruins, I can feel my spirit taking flight, and I can't hold back the sun. Can't hold back the sun. It's been too cold, it's been too long. I can't hold back the sun. Can't hold back the sun. Can't hold back the sun. It's been too cold, it's been too long. I can't hold back the sun.
Welcome to the Need to Know Music Show on Switchbox TV. I'm Ronan McManus, and today we're joined by an English singer-songwriter who's achieved so many of the things on a musician's bucket list. He's releasing records, touring with musical legends, playing some of the most iconic venues and festivals, playing live on big TV shows, and having songs included on movies and TV shows. We're delighted to welcome Jon Allen. How are you doing?
I'm okay, and still I'm not happy, man. What is it? What can I do?
I know, I just started listing all your achievements at the start, so you can't moan. So,
yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
So how have you found the last few months, the sort of strange times we've been living in?
Wow, man. I mean, that's a whole therapy session right there to explain it, isn't it? I mean, it's just kind of like, it's all about phases, isn't it? There was the there was the loo roll phase, the obsession with purchasing loo roll. Then there was the let's get the booze off the shelves phase. Then there's the actually this is fine. Then actually I'm going crazy, and then I need to be productive. So yeah, I mean it's we're all on a steep learning curve here, aren't we? But I don't know. It kind of just it brings out the best and the worst in us, I think, emotionally, and also in everybody's personalities. You're kind of seeing the best and the worst right now. But yeah, it's I'm happy to say that I'm in a kind of a good place right now, and I'm just enjoying a simple life, really.
So have you been like writing, recording? What have you been doing during lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, I was in the process of sort of slowly working through a record, and there had a kind of a tone to it that was quite dark. And the experience of COVID made me think I actually would like to just express a different emotion, to express a hopeful emotion, to express a happy emotion. So I wrote a single for just straight off the bat, kind of recorded it, at home. And that was the last thing that I did. So that was a nice sort of, just to sort of jump into the emotion of it.
That's interesting that it actually affected the emotion of the stuff you were writing. Actually decided to, it was a conscious decision to make something more optimistic.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? But the strange thing is that you can react to an emotional situation in one of two ways. You can either kind of go deeper into the darkness, or you can try and, go into the light a little bit more. And I actually felt like there was enough sadness and uncertainty out there in the world that we needed to just try and feel a bit better. So I wrote this song called Can't Hold Back the Sun. And yeah, it was kind of like, this is the end of lockdown, even though it's not quite, it was sort of written with that in mind.
With that sort of in anticipation of the finally reaching that light at the end of the tunnel that
Exactly.
we're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the beginning. I'll come back to your latest single a bit later on. But so let's take it back to start. So you were born in Winchester, but you grew up in Devon. Is that right? So how did you sort of get into music as a kid? I mean, how did you or what age were you?
Yeah. I guess, yeah, there was music around. I mean, my parents weren't the singers or anything, but they had a few vinyl albums. I remember that my dad had like an Elvis Greatest Hits, and my mum had some Motown stuff. She had a Motown Chartbusters Volume 3. There was a Jose Feliciano LP. There was a tiny amount of, I think my dad had Let It Be album. So these were kind of things that you sort of plowed through as a kid, and you kind of got a little bit of a sense of. Like a lot of kids, you probably started singing maybe, like in church or something like that, or having a sense of, melody and harmony and everything. And I actually did a bit of that, learned a bit of piano when I was about 7, and then actually sang in the choir for a bit when I was at school, and then kind of gave it all up, and then became an angsty teenager and picked up a guitar and started playing the drums as an adolescent. And yeah, kind of just never looked back really after that. So yeah.
And so did you find, was there a kind of a scene to kind of get into? I mean, how did you find getting into music in the early stages of playing live, kind of away from a big city? I mean, was there a local music scene?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, the whole scene thing. I suppose when I was sort of awakening musically, I suppose it was kind of like grunge. There was like everybody was trying to be, like a Nirvana type situation. So, I actually did that weird thing where, when everybody's doing something, I just thought, I'm not buying, I really like Nirvana now. I appreciate it now without it having been shoved down my throat as a kid. So I was sort of thinking, no, I'm going to listen to the Beatles at this point. And then that took me down a road of kind of Dylan and loads of other things from there, sort of thing. So the great thing about, even in an age before the internet, because rock and roll has got the sort of heritage now that you can actually dig back into some, historical kind of context, and you don't always have to be listening to what I mean, don't get me wrong, I was taping the charts as a kid, that's what you do you know what I mean? So I was doing the illegal taping of the songs, the top 10, top 40.
We've all been there.
Yeah, man.
Hovering over the pause button.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose I kind of just went, I don't know, in the 90s there was a bit of a 60s revival going on, so I got really into sort of 60s music and and all of that stuff. So I kind of came back to rock and everything a bit later. But yeah, there was, in terms of a scene, I mean, I guess it was a lot of it's kind of by the sea down in Devon, so there's a bit of a surfer kind of vibe. It's a bit kind of so it was kind of like reef and kind of surf rock and kind of grungy type stuff. If that was a scene, I guess that was it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But you went to LIPA, is that right? You had the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. So how did you kind of what was the process of getting into that for starters, and then how did you find it? How did you find being in that environment?
I guess there's a bit of a Beatle link in there. There was this, when LIPA opened, it was all kind of hoopla and very exciting. Paul McCartney swinging into, and the Queen cutting bits of tape and everything, and it was Paul McCartney's grammar school. So it just felt like there was a sort of sense of, I want to be a pop star. I want to be I want to kind of, make a career at it. And it's very hard in Devon. Really isn't much of a scene. So it just felt like a good moment. I did have a sense that, once they said yes to me, there was a kind of feeling of almost like it arrived, like, well, that's it then. I guess it's just superstardom. It's just moments away, And actually, that was just the beginning of something. There really isn't. They're not going to just lay the red carpet out for you to kind of, become something. But overall the experience was really positive. I made some great friends, I made some great contacts, and I kind of honed my craft a bit as a songwriter. So like every university experience, it enriched me, not just, you know, intellectually, but also kind of just emotionally as well.
I mean, I actually did a similar sort of course in London, which actually some of the guys from Reef had actually been on that course.
Yeah.
Previous,
Okay.
one of the guys was in my brother's year, and
Yeah.
it was just audition, just auditioning you were in, and it was just brilliant being in an environment of just playing with different musicians, playing different sort of styles of music, and just
Yeah.
kind of getting to know, just mixing in those circles. I found that so inspirational.
So what's your instrument?
I sing and play guitar.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I think we're about similar age. We've got a really similar.
Okay.
I was grunge head when I was young.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got into that and then discovered all
Yeah.
that 60s stuff. I think we've got a very
Yeah.
similar story.
Yeah.
But so how did you find being in that environment, playing every day? Did you feel it really enriched your songwriting? I'm presuming the level of musicianship was quite high at Lipper. How did
Yeah.
you find all that?
I mean, in hindsight, and even at the time, I had mixed emotions about the whole idea of formal. You know, the whole idea. Let's face it. Even now, the idea of a degree in pop music is slightly ridiculous. I mean, I jokingly sometimes say on the mic at at gigs, I'm fully qualified for this, folks. You know, I've got a degree in pop music. So I was sort of acutely aware of the fact that part of what made the Beatles work was the fact that they learned on the job. Do you know what I mean? They learned in the field. They went out to Hamburg and they kind of, they learned, okay, Max Shaw, we need to kind of keep them going in the clubs or whatever. So they didn't really have the formal education, and it worked all right for them. Also, the other thing that slightly worried me about Lipper was I wasn't necessarily interested in becoming like the unbelievably best chops kind of musician in the world. You know, I wasn't kind of going to start kind of doing slap bass or kind of, I was always looking at musicianship, virtuosity as just a means to an end to sort of express something as a writer. So I was always a little bit, wary of kind of those cats at Lipper that were kind of, into the latest kind of incredibly virtuoso music. So I was a little bit on the periphery as this guy that writes songs, and so, but I did meet some great people. I mean, there was a great songwriting teacher called Mark Pearman who used to be in the Sisters of Mercy, he was a kind of a bit of a guru, who kind of demystified the process of songwriting for me and just said, look, John, sometimes you just write a song, it doesn't have to be, the deepest core of yourself. Sometimes you just write a song sometimes. So he was a great guy. And so it was good for me.
I had a similar sort of thing, actually, a really similar experience. It's really funny. We've got so many parallels, but I sort of found some of the guys sort of got lost in going down that rabbit hole of getting into this kind of fusion and stuff and time signatures and all the stuff that I just felt it wasn't really relevant. And the things that kind of really touched me as a listener, music lover, was kind of just the emotion in songs and how it makes you feel, rather than kind of doing. I never learned all those scales, even on the course. I didn't actually finish the course because I ended up playing live too much
Totally
and lost
rock and roll,
completely.
man.
yeah. So I just, I mean, in fairness, Reef didn't finish either because I got signed. But I've sort of found that it sort of helped me in my development to kind of work out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to go about. And I realized I didn't want to sort of learn, sort of watch those Dave Weckl videos and kind of get really into all the stuff, But
I mean, there is I remember, hearing John Lennon. I mean, when the Beatles broke up in whatever 69, 70, he did those famous Playboy interviews where he kind of, trashed everybody and trashed the legacy and said that the Beatles sold out and, we sold out on rock and roll. And, so there's a little bit of me that thinks that maybe even I sold out by, in the second year. After the first year at Lipper, I thought, why am I here? And part of me thought, if I had the balls, I would have gone to London and just, worked in a bar and started singing in clubs. Do you know what I mean? So there was a bit of me that sort of felt like I'd taken a you know, let's face it, going to university is a little bit of it's got a bit of comfort to it. Do you know what I mean? You know what you've got to do. You've got your classes, you've got your whatever it is, your student loan or something. It's not kind of, you know, you're not throwing yourself at the very deep end. The very deep end is going, right, I'm going to London. I'm going to do gigs. I'm going to get a job, you know. And I even felt a little bit, and maybe that was just some sort of, you know, rock and roll mystique that I had about what I should have done. But yeah, I had that same conflict, you know what I mean? Like, am I really learning? Am I really, you know, pushing myself, you know? I know you're hurting now, and your hurt has cut you deep. But from the ruins of defeat, there'll be a better day.
This is another parallel, actually, is Dead Man's Suit.
Yeah.
So this is your debut album. I actually wrote a song called Dead Man's Suit in 2014, and an album I did with my little brother. And I thought, it's a great name for a song. Surely, I can't believe no one's ever written a song called Dead Man's Suit. And then I typed it in, and I found you'd beaten me by 5 years.
I think there's someone else has done it as well, though. There's another band that did it. I can't even remember the name, but there was also that movie called Dead Man's Shoes.
Yes.
So, you know,
which is what everybody calls my song when they ask me for it.
Yeah.
Everyone says, "Oh, do that song you wrote called Dead Man's Shoes." It's not called that, but anyway. So so you got your first album, your debut solo album was 2009. What was that like to get that kind of? I know sort of leapt from Lipper to your first album, but how did you feel getting that kind of released? There was, you know, because my first one was 2010. And my first solo album, to have that sort of thing you've created yourself out there, what was that? What was it like in the process leading up to it, and then actually getting it released?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you had a similar situation or a similar feeling, but it's ultimately it's a kind of a transitional moment, I think, to you know, there are those stories they say about, you know, the first album is written over a lifetime, the next one has to be written in 12 months or 9 months or something like that. So, you know, I kind of have this analogy about me as a, you know, sort of Dick Whittington or whatever, walking around with something on his shoulder with all his songs, you know, for 10 years, you know, kind of collecting these. And if you're not careful, you get stuck, you know, you get stuck with your demos, with your kind of demoitis of these particular songs that you know, have got this emotional connection to. And actually you need to move on with your life. You need to move on creatively. You need to sort of say, you know, this is the version. It may not be perfect, but it is the version. And I'm going to do this for my sanity. So it was probably my most precious kind of moment in a way, because I had so much baggage with those songs, and, you know, some of them have been around for years. So it was kind of like, you know, some sort of, you know, Freudian kind of, oh my God, I have to do this for my soul. I have to get this done. Otherwise I'm going to I'll be walking around with these songs forever, you know. So,
you have to let them fly. You have to let them fly the nest eventually, don't you?
Or fall to the ground.
Well, they either fly or they don't. So
yeah, totally. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, so it was basically, in the end, it was cathartic, and it was good to get it done, you know. And yeah, thank God. How about you?
I kind of had a feeling it was a bit like clearing the decks, and as you say, kind of like. So, but I had same sort of thing. I had a lot of these songs had been knocking around for a while, and some of them had been through various band lineups and that hadn't worked, and they survived all that and come out the other end. And it still felt there was something in these songs that I loved, that I felt that was worth putting out there. So yeah, like my first album was a bit of a collection of songs I'd built up over the years. But to get them sort of out and say, right, okay, this is released now. Okay, what's next? Then you sort of realize you haven't actually promoted the album you just recorded, because your story mine's on the next one. But yeah, I sort of felt like it was again a very cathartic thing, and a very sort of necessary. It felt like a necessary start in a process. It wasn't the end; it was just the start of the process of then starting to be the guy who's writing and recording. And did that mindset kick in where you were thinking, okay, I'm now a recording artist. This is what I do now. Did that mindset kick in at that point?
I guess, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I managed to write another album. I would probably, there was a certain amount of panic, which is normal, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, it's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it? You know, everything. You know, there's always, you know, nobody really quite knows what they're doing. So you just sort of have to sort of believe that you do, and I guess inside of me there was that kind of determination, and I'd seen other people that had squandered moments and opportunities to where they went into a kind of spiral of, I don't know, over analysis of a situation, or kind of I knew that I had to kind of keep going, otherwise it would just spin away, you know. So sometimes doing something is better than doing nothing. You know what I mean?
I mean, did you have anybody around you? Because I felt like you may have a similar experience just because it's a similar time frame
Yeah,
as far as within the way the music business was. I mean,
yeah,
I just self-released my first one. There was no
yeah,
real record labels to speak of. They weren't signing people
yeah,
to develop them. There was managers weren't really, there was no money to pay managers, and
yeah,
managers in the old sense didn't exist anymore. Like I sort of felt like before people had advisors around them, people to tell them what to do and how to do it in terms of release strategy, promo, and all that stuff. But I think our generation, we sort of had to be all of that and the artist, and that just feels to me to be like unfair and too many sides to that. You have a business head and an artistic head, which I'm sure you know are two completely conflicting things of the
yeah.
human psyche. So did you have anybody around you at that time?
Well, I had a strange experience that there was a bit of a flirtation with Decca, and just prior, they sort of, they'd said, or there was one A&R guy that was sort of, you know, a guy called Charlie Rapino, who was like, John, we love this. This is great. We're going to sign this. And, you know, this is a goer, you know, and it got really close. And then suddenly whoever it was, the head honcho, just said no. And so we were suddenly sort of left, and we had this, I mean, I'd made the record, you know, but I kind of felt a little bit kind of defeated. And then I went to a few promo guys and just said, well, you know, I've got this record, and we were supposed to get signed, and, you know, so it kind of, we just started, these promo people just started plugging, if, you know, I'd had a few bits of success before that, but they basically just started plugging that. And from there, things started to roll with radio. And then eventually it got put out through Absolute, which is an indie distributor in the UK. And then they, you know, got behind it in terms of some of the marketing side of things. I can feel it. I can feel it. Just like someone new has stood in my shoes. I can feel it. I can feel it. The way you took away my blues. I'm in heaven, but I swear my feet are still on the ground. I'm in heaven, and I pray I'm never coming down.
When you did Jules Holland, I mean, around the same time, the same year as you did, what was it like doing that? Because that's one of those iconic UK music shows that you sort of, it's, you know, you feel like it's a real stamp of approval to get on there. What was it like doing that?
It was great. It was great. I mean, it's, you know, funnily enough, I remember seeing a front cover or something like that of Coldplay in one of those magazines or whatever, you know, a few years back, and they were obviously at the very height of their success, and somebody was saying, try and enjoy it, try and stay sane, you know. And even in a small way with me, you know, when you achieve something like that, when you get into a situation, you are just trying to actually try hard to enjoy it, because obviously there's so much emotions and there's so much, you know, it's quite scary, and you're trying not to fall over and forget your words, and, you know, so you're doing your best to sort of ride so many horses at once, you know, to be in the moment, to not, you know, to enjoy it, but to also feel the song. you know, and also, you know, just dealing with the pressure of kind of something going well, the pressure of something going well, as much as something not going well, you know, wherever you turn, there's pressure, you know. So I can remember it being quite intense. I can remember Jules Holland being very, just, you know, very a pro, you know, very, he kind of just sort of, everyone was there for a long time. He sort of breezed in a bit like the Queen late on, you know, took a look around, said a few words, you know, said a quick hello to me, and said, oh, he'd heard me on the radio and he liked me, and kind of made me feel a bit calm. And so, yeah, it's kind of just surreal, and you're just taking everything in, and everything looks different when you're there. It's all a lot smaller and everything, but it's an incredible operation, the way they run it. I mean, it's so technically, you know, a bit of a miracle how they do it. And yeah, I mean, and then I remember we all sat around or whatever the Friday afterwards, me and the producer and the band members, and we all just had a little, you know, whatever it was, dinner, and we just sat and watched the TV. And you know what it's like when you're watching yourself, you're kind of hoping that it's not terrible. So
Well, I think it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I
cool.
watched that just last night or this morning, and it was In Your Light, the song
Yeah,
you sang, wasn't it? And
yeah,
just acoustic guitar, piano.
yeah.
Your voice was just sounded beautiful. I have to say, you
Cool,
didn't look
man.
like you were panicking at all or
It's the
anything.
heavy
It might have been that.
medication.
It might have been that duck with the legs going fast. But you
Totally,
were
totally. Yeah,
you
yeah.
were kind of, you looked cool and calm, and it sounded
Nice.
so beautiful. That song. It's a lovely
Cool.
song.
There was the big debate was the hat, no hat or hat. That was the big thing before I was going on.
That.
My promo guy was like, lose the hat, John, lose the hat. And I,
So how
so
did you feel that landed? Did it land on the right side?
I don't
You
know,
happy
man.
with
I
the?
mean, who knows? I could have been calling you from Monte Carlo now if I hadn't worn that hat. You know what I mean? So we'll never know, you know?
But at that time, you did some great support tours, didn't you? Played with some absolute legends. I mean,
Yeah.
looking at the list of like Emmylou Harris, Dionne Warwick, Mark Knopfler, Katie Tunstall, Graham Parker, who's been on Switchbox,
Yeah.
Damien Rice.
Yeah.
What were those tours? Or what was the sort of the most enjoyable one out of those? If you have to pick, I'm going to make you pick one, unfortunately. But
Probably I'll
what?
pick the one that probably isn't in that list, which is probably the one I did the most brilliant, probably satisfying thing I did was probably the Mark Knopfler dates, the shows that I did with him when, and actually that was also with Emmylou. He did an album with Emmylou Harris, All the Roadrunners, and I met Mark at a birthday party in Shepherd's Bush at the Bush Hall, and there was a sort of a connection with my management anyway. But he was just really generous and just, you know, just said, well, how can I help? And, you know, there was a list of, you know, well, it'd be great to do some touring with you. Yeah, sure. And would you play on a track? Yeah, sure.
That's the
So,
don't ask, don't get
yeah, oh,
school of promo.
completely.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, so it was Wembley Arena. It was the Olympia in Paris. It was Belgium, I think we did as well. So, you know, it was going out to these enormodomes, you know, getting on the acoustic guitar, and you can't really see anything, and you just hear this sort of wall of people, and that was pretty crazy. When I think about, as a kid, I had an A90 cassette of, I think it had Brothers in Arms on one side and No Jacket Required, Phil Collins on the other, and it was the only cassette I had, you know. So it's kind of like, I've come somewhere from here, you know. That was probably the biggest sort of thrill.
It must have been amazing to get out and to play those sorts of venues.
Yeah, again, deep breaths and kind of going into the loos at the back, and a bit of okay, here we go.
I deserve to be here. I deserve to
This
be
is
here.
it. Yeah, this is it. This is where I belong. This is where I belong.
Massive imposter syndrome going on.
Yeah.
But I saw there was a side project you did called The Third Degree,
Yeah.
which is basically applying sort of 60s, authentic 60s sort of soul sound
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
mostly covers, which is it
Yeah.
fair to say? And it was like Duffy, Kylie, Britney Spears, Katy Perry, these sort of covers everyone knows, but they just sound like they're 60s soul songs. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, firstly, how did that come about? How did you do that? And then secondly, it must have been a lot of fun giving those treatments to those songs and realizing how good those songs are.
Yeah, I mean, it came about by accident that a promo person said that it'd be good if you could do a cover, and I just did this. I mean, it turned out that it was too weird and out there for me, Jon Allen, the singer songwriter, because I ended up doing this Mercy kind of, you know, I love you, but I got to stay true kind of thing, you know, and it was kind of really kind of Spencer Davis or something like that. And it was just a bit too weird for me. And Tristan, the guy that produced it, said, oh, well, let's just try and put it out, you know, through, you know, he had a connection to Acid Jazz. So it ended up going out through Acid Jazz and, you know, being a kind of radio hit. And so it all sort of came by accident, really. And yeah, we just sort of had to go at a few other, you know, pop songs. We tried to pick pop songs that we liked and kind of worked. Some of them worked better than others. Some of them, I mean, the Mercy one worked because it's sort of a blues anyway. But yeah, it was just a kind of a fun side.
I Kissed a Girl, Katy Perry.
Okay.
I thought that worked. That works really well. That I thought it was fantastic. And Can't Get You Out of My Head.
Nice.
Kylie. I mean, that's just. I mean, that was a huge, huge hit in the. But what I've realised, listening to them in that setting, you realise how great those songs are. You know, you may not be a fan of Kylie or Katy Perry and hearing them in that pop thing, but to take the songs out of that setting and treat them completely differently. I mean, what was that process like? It must be very enjoyable.
Yeah, it is up to a point, and then it becomes, if you're not careful, it becomes a formula as well. You know, you feel like, well, how can we? Let's do the shuffle beat. Let's do that. You know, so it can be fun up to a point, and that, I mean, one of the things that was very fun was the live thing. We did a few shows as well, so we had like a big horn section, and you know, we did Vintage at Goodwood one year, and it was a lot of fun to sort of be out there in a different context, being a kind of Northern soul review thing. So that was a lot of fun. And we thought we could have been in Vegas or something. If we'd had the right, you know, PR people behind us, we could have been like a big show band, but
hey. Well, so the latest single, Can't Hold Back the Sun, you talked about that, but touched on it a bit earlier on. So this is part of a new album that you've been have you finished the album, or are you still working on it?
I'm as near as damn it. I've probably got a couple more songs I want to add to the pot, but yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit in a singles mode at the moment with this, that I've written this song, and I guess maybe in some ways it will end up on the album, maybe in a more acoustic form, who knows. But yeah, I sort of leaped out of the album to do a single, and I'm kind of, you know, not quite sure what's next really in terms of going back to the album. But yeah, I mean, there's an album definitely coming.
I think there's a sort of a kind of because there's no live gigs going on at the moment, there's a thing about releasing single songs rather than albums. I mean, I know that my band is doing that, and there's a few. I know my brother, Elvis Costello, he's doing that. He's releasing sort of like 6 single songs rather than a batch of them together. It just seems that people are consuming music in a different way with the streaming side of things. But so I mean, what are your thoughts on sort of modern music business, modern releasing, or that kind of Spotify thing? Is it something that you've embraced? Is it something you feel comfortable in, or you know, or like me, you're still kind of really sold on the album, of the idea of the album?
Yeah, I mean, we were only having this conversation today, actually. We were sat in a cafe talking about it, and somebody was listening into our conversation, and I'm like, oh, do you listen to albums? Yeah, I've just listened to Astral Weeks or something. Okay. And they were kind of, they were 28-year-old, you know, but yeah, I mean, I think we're certainly of our generation, we're still, you know, the album is still something to us. It's still an important, I don't know, just an important sort of entity to think about. I also think that my audience as well they're still invested in the idea of an album, you know, even a physical album. And certainly the vinyl thing is a really encouraging development, that people want to, you know, take the time, sit down in a nice comfy sofa on a Sunday, you know, have their pint of Guinness and listen to an album, you know. So, you know, people want to kind of give themselves a time to actually appreciate something over the 45 minutes or whatever it is. So I think there's value in that. I'm personally not one of those people I'm not as anti the wave of change that's happened with streaming, and you know, there's a lot of people when you go on Facebook, I don't know whether your Facebook looks the same, but there's always people kicking the streaming services and YouTube and Spotify. And actually, when you dig into the numbers, these companies, I mean, I believe that Spotify just broke even about a year ago. And, you know, they're all running at losses at the moment. So, you know, we have to remember that we're transitioning into, you know, a new era of format, and that is always a difficult time to make money in. I mean, we have to be grateful that we're not in the Napster times, you know, and that ultimately, just as the music industry matured from, you know, the rather exploitative, you know, 50s and 60s where the singles were being released and a tiny percentage went to the artist, you know, the artist will eventually be reimbursed, you know, for the streaming thing. But I don't think it's the right attitude to sort of knock. In a way, we're knocking the consumer, because the consumer is ultimately leading this change. You know, the consumer wants to be receiving music in this way. I listen to Spotify. You know, I do this. So I mean, we have to be careful that we don't turn into the cotton mill producers of, you know, of the Victorian age or whatever, that have refused to change their mechanical devices, and they're just moaning. Do you know what I mean? We kind of need to go with this change, you know?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a sort of vinyl, album buying market, and it seems to kind of be two separate things, and maybe should be treated as such. But I just wanted to. This is the Need to Know Music show, so we do like to get a recommendation from you. So, I mean, of someone that maybe people haven't heard of, or people, just music that people need to know. What would be your recommendation?
I mean, this is probably the most unoriginal thing in the world to say, but Bob Dylan, have you heard of him? He's got an album out that's pretty good at the moment.
Oh yeah, I know the guy.
Yeah, he's
I've
got a
heard
new
of him.
album that's pretty good. Oh God, you know, the trouble is, I mean, maybe this is confessing actually in terms of what the difference with streaming is, that I will, you know, I'm a little magpie, and I'll Shazam and I'll put it on my playlist and I'll forget what it's called. So having said that, you know, there is you know, the negative side of things is that I'm that awful person that will find something and forget the name of it. So I could go to Spotify now and find the latest thing that I'll tell you what I'll give you my latest Shazams. Okay, so
Okay.
Bob Dylan's new album is great. So what have I? I did do a weird thing, which is very unusual. I bought Mojo magazine, like for the first time in forever. Also, you're probably the same. When I'm watching TV, you know, so you're watching a show, something comes on Netflix or something. So what the world needs now, Jackie DeShannon. I just Shazam that. But let's see what I just Shazam. Okay, we've got Wait for You, Tom Walker. I heard on the radio. Isley Brothers, Trouble in Mind. So yeah, I mean, it's all, a lot of the time it's old stuff. Adetta, Hit or Miss, different drum, Linda Ronstadt. You know, so I just kind of like, you know, I'm just
Brilliant.
listening.
That'll give us plenty of listening now. That's plenty of plenty of homework.
Yeah.
But listen, I'd like to say thanks for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I could have carried on for another hour, but we're going to
Great
finish
to
it up
talk to you,
now.
man.
But thanks, John, and good luck with everything you're doing. The new song sounds great, and we'll put a link to it in the description. So, all right, thank you, Jon Allen. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, man.